The moon hung low in the ink-black sky, casting a pale glow through the skeletal branches of the forest. The traveler's breath came in ragged gasps, each one a desperate attempt to steady himself as he hurtled forward, feet pounding against the damp earth. The air was thick with the scent of decaying leaves and something else, something foul and metallic that made his stomach churn. The moon hung low in the ink-black sky, casting a pale glow through the skeletal branches of the forest. The traveler's breath came in ragged gasps, each one a desperate attempt to steady himself as he hurtled forward, feet pounding against the damp earth. The air was thick with the scent of decaying leaves and something else, something foul and metallic that made his stomach churn. He had been on the road for days, making his way back home after months away from his family. But the journey had taken an unexpected turn when he strayed from the main road, seeking a shortcut through the dense woods. At first, it seemed like a good idea, a way to shave hours off his travels. But then he saw the first house, a quaint two-story cabin, its windows dark and lifeless. The traveler had approached cautiously, thinking he might find someone to guide him back to the main road. But as he neared, he saw something that made his blood run cold. Deep, jagged claw marks gouged into the wooden door, as if something had tried to tear its way inside. The air was still, too still, and the silence pressed against his ears like a physical force. Then, from within the house came a noise, a slow scraping sound, like nails dragging against wood. He didn't wait to see what it was. Turning on his heel, he sprinted back into the trees, the weight of unseen eyes pressing upon him. And that was when he heard the footsteps. At first, they were distant, nearly indistinguishable from the rustling of leaves in the wind. But they grew louder, faster, and he realized with a sharp jolt of fear that whatever was behind him was moving on all fours, its limbs pounding against the ground in a sickening rhythm. He pushed himself harder, lungs burning, legs screaming in protest. His only hope was to find shelter, to reach another house where someone, anyone, might help him. And then he saw it, a second house, this one even more decrepit than the first. The door hung open on one hinge, creaking softly in the breeze. Faint candlelight flickered in one of the windows, a beacon of hope in the suffocating darkness. With a burst of speed, he lunged for the entrance, slamming the door shut behind him. The interior was cold and smelled of damp wood and something acrid, something that made his nose wrinkle. He pressed himself against the wall, heart hammering, ears straining for any sign of movement outside. For a moment there was nothing. Then, the sound of something heavy thudding against the door. A guttural growl, low and menacing, seeped through the cracks in the wood. The traveler bit back a cry, shuffling deeper into the house. The candlelight wavered, casting long, distorted shadows against the walls. He turned a corner and stopped dead in his tracks. A figure stood in the center of the room. It was a man, or at least it had been. His clothes were tattered, his skin pale and marred with deep, festering wounds. His eyes were hollow, sunken pits, and his mouth was twisted into something that could have been a grin or a grimace. The traveler took a step back, his breath hitching in his throat. The man's head cocked to the side, the vertebrae in his neck cracking audibly. "You shouldn't be here," the figure rasped, voice dry as brittle leaves. "It knows you now. It won't stop." The traveler didn't stay to ask what he meant. He bolted past the figure, crashing through a side door and out into the night. The trees loomed around him, their twisted limbs reaching for him like skeletal fingers. The wind howled, carrying with it a sound that made his blood turn to ice, a shrill, unearthly shriek that shattered the night. He didn't know how long he ran, only that his body moved on instinct, driven by a primal need to survive. He stumbled across more houses, each one bearing the same signs of decay, of something old and malevolent lurking just beyond sight. Every door he tried was either locked or led to horrors worse than what followed him. But he had to keep going. He had to make it home. His wife and child were waiting for him. After what felt like an eternity, he finally broke through the tree line. His home stood at the end of the narrow dirt road, its warm glow beckoning him forward. Relief flooded him as he sprinted toward the front door, throwing it open and slamming it shut behind him. He locked it, bolting every latch, every chain, every... "Darling, you're back." His wife's voice was filled with joy as she rushed to him, pulling him into a tight embrace. His child toddled up, giggling, arms reaching for him. For the first time that night, he let himself believe he was safe. Then his wife's expression changed. Her smile faltered, and her eyes darkened with something he couldn't quite place. "You didn't let it in, did you?" she whispered. A chill slithered down his spine.